Well, awesome. Well, this is table 45. If you haven't been with us before, table is, because you're at tables, it's also part of our mission statement, which we're going to talk about today, making room at the table. And 45 is because we have 45 minutes or less. So if you hate this experience, you only have 45 minutes or less, and it's over. So it's not as bad. So. And then this is Trevor. Trevor's behind the camera. Trevor is our good buddy, Kay and Roger Roebuck's son, but he's an Emmy award-winning cinematographer, and he graciously films this each week. So we do record this, and we put it on the website. So if you ever miss a lesson or you want to pass it on to someone, you can certainly do that. So cool. Good to see you. So in 1901, America was a nation that was still deeply divided by racial segregation. Anyone around 1901? Okay. The Civil War had been over about 40 years, but it was still really fresh in people's mind and hearts in America. And President Theodore Roosevelt invited a gentleman named Booker T. Washington to the White House for dinner. And so Booker shows up. It was a simple invitation, a seat at the table. And Booker T. Washington was an educator, an author, and an influential voice in America at that time. Oh, forgot to tell you, he's black. Booker T. Washington was black. America lost their mind. They lost their ever-loving mind that Roosevelt, the president, invited a black man into the White House for dinner. The country erupted, outrage, backlash, threats, all because that table for America at the president's table represented something that people just weren't ready to accept yet: equality, dignity, and a shared space. 71 years later, in 1972, anybody around for that? I was 2. At the height of the Cold War, the United States and China were locked in this really deep distrust, if you remember that season. They were opposing ideologies. There was not a real relationship between China and the United States. And then President Richard Nixon traveled to China, and he sits down with the premier, Zhou Enlai, for a series of banquets. Cameras were rolling, the world was watching. And over those meals, not meetings, over those meals at a table, conversations began. Walls began to fall down between the two nations, and a relationship was formed that literally reshaped world history. Literally reshaped it. China would not be the superpower they are today had those meetings not occurred with Nixon back in 1972. 2 tables, 2 meals, and 2 completely different outcomes. And in both cases, the table wasn't about food, was it? It was about relationships. It was really about access. That's what it was about. It was about who's in and who's out. And it's about what happens when people who don't normally sit down together, what happens when they do. When you open up the Gospels, you're going to see Jesus, not in meetings, not even at church very often. We see him around tables. We see him sitting together. And sometimes meeting at a table can change the world for the better. And sometimes meeting at a table can really show you how broken things really are. So what we're going to do in this next series called At the Table with Jesus, you should have this on your picture, on your table there, is I want to look at all the different times in the Gospels where Jesus wasn't preaching to the crowds, but he was sitting at a table with somebody. And you'll see he's with tax collectors, he's with sinners, he's with Pharisees, he's with close friends, he's even at a table with someone who will betray him, even unto death. So that's what this series is going to be about. And we're going to look at who Jesus sat with, why he sat with them, and what happened when he did. Because those tables, we're talking about then, but I want to bring it forward to talk about now. Because we still live in a country where we have tables, right? not just to eat our food, but we have tables where that's where fellowship begins. That's where relationships continue. That's where things happen. And what I'd like to wrestle with this week or this series with you is who's at your table and who's not at your table and who needs to be at your table. And not just your table, but even this table or even this table of the church. Okay? Who needs to be here? So we're going to look at Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 14. I put 24 on there because I was asleep when I was doing this. But can you pass some of these out for me? We'll get this. Marie, you're young. Can you run to table and give some of those? Thank you. So Luke chapter 14, it picks up. It's on the, I'm sorry, I didn't do two sides. You'll see it says number 1 on it. It says, one Sabbath when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. So Jesus is being invited to a meal at a Pharisee's house, not just any Pharisee, but apparently a really prominent one. Now, based on your recollection of the gospel accounts, what is Jesus' relationship like with Pharisees? Not good. Tell me about it. What do you know about it? What was the, not besides it was not good, but
he would call them a viper.
He called them names, okay. All right. What else do we know about it?
They felt threatened by him.
They were threatened by him? Sure. Okay. What else?
They were the leadership. They were dealing with the end people.
Yeah, they were the known leadership structure of the church. The church was the temple, right? And Jesus comes in and he starts talking kind of a different gospel. That's why they were threatened. The people's attention and loyalty and affection are going to Jesus. They recognize that. Did they have any issues with Jesus on days like the Sabbath? Do you remember some of that?
He's breaking the rules.
He's breaking the rules? Yeah. So where does this dinner, what day is this located or this happening? First 2 words, one Sabbath. It's like, all right, here we go. And the Pharisee invites Jesus into his home. Now, do you think this Pharisee is just being a good old dude? Something smells fishy here, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, we know that they had a very argumentative, hostile relationship. They were always divided about something. More than once, the Pharisees had issues with Jesus and the Sabbath. They would say things like, your disciples don't wash their hands. Your disciples are picking grain on the Sabbath. You're healing people on the Sabbath. You're working on the Sabbath. They had a big problem with the Sabbath. So I don't think it's an accident. One Sabbath, Jesus gets an invite to a Pharisee's table. Okay? What do you smell here? A setup. A trap is coming, right? And we see that because it says he was being carefully watched. He was being carefully watched. Have you ever been carefully watched? You ever go into a store? You ever go into a store like you want to shop and someone's like watching you? It's a little unnerving, isn't it? That's kind of the setting here is Jesus is being carefully watched. Nobody enjoys this. So obviously it's on the Sabbath. It's in the Pharisee's home and he's being carefully watched. It's going to be a super chill lunch, right? Yeah, not. And there in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Now, does this sound like the kind of guy a prominent Pharisee would generally have in his circle of friendships? What is this guy doing at this lunch or at this dinner? He's setting Jesus up. Because what's the assumption with Jesus is in the room. It's at this guy's house. It's the Sabbath. And they already have an issue with Jesus on the Sabbath. What's the assumption when you bring in a guy like this who's got this obviously physical ailment?
Jesus is going to work.
Jesus is going to work because Jesus is Jesus. Jesus sees he's going to be compassionate. He's going to see that this guy's struggling. He's not going to just ignore that because it's Sunday or Sabbath. It's Saturday, and then never mind. So here we have it. It's being set up. This man is here clearly for ill reasons. So Jesus knows this, right? He knows this. And we know he knows this because what's the question he asks? He says to the Pharisees and the experts in the law, this room is packed. This is loaded, right? And he says what? Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? What's he doing? He sees their trap, sees what's going on, and he says, I'm going to ask you a question. He's the master of this. He's the master of turning the tide, right? So he sees the setup, sees the man, sees the Pharisees, sees they're all there. He says, well, tell me, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? What'd they say? Why didn't they say anything? Because you ever play chess with someone? You ever you feel good in your chess game? You ever play this game? You feel, oh man, I feel so good. Then they make a move and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be checkmated. That's what's going on here. Is they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not going to answer that question. Are you kidding me? Because I know I'm dealing with Jesus again. So he takes a hold of the man, he heals him, and where does he go? He sends him on his way. Why does he send him on his way? Because that man was never there for the lunch. That man was there as a prop. And Jesus knew it. And Jesus dignified it. Jesus said, look, you got invited for all the wrong reasons. They're making a mockery of you. They're putting you in a position to bait me. We're not having it. I'm compassionate for you. I'm going to heal you. And get out of here. Not in a mean way. These are not people worthy of you. Go be healed and go on with your life. Jesus does it with such dignity. Then he turns to the rest of the restaurant, the rest of the luncheon, and he says, if one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out? What's he saying to them by saying this?
That they're going to work also.
They're going to work also. Why? Why would they work, though, on that particular scenario?
Somebody's in trouble. Somebody has something.
It's not even that. Yeah, that's the beginning of it. But he's making it personal. He's like, look, you guys aren't horrible human beings. If your own child fell into a ditch or your own oxen who makes you money, you are going to deal with it. You're going to do something about it. That's just plain and simple. So why are you doing this? Why are you bringing this dude in? Why are you? You're hypocrites. He doesn't say it. He says, will you not immediately pull it out? Verse 6, what is it? What do they say to that? Nothing. Yeah. Let me think about it. Jesus performs a major medical miracle, and they say nothing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that happened? They say nothing because their trap didn't work, and Jesus silences his critics with truth. He does the compassionate thing. He heals this man. And then Jesus is like, all right, you invited me here. Let's go. Okay? So the next section, verse 7, he's checking out the seating arrangements, right? Because, you get invited to a luncheon and you're invited into this home. And if you've been in that scenario, right, we all have, you don't kind of know where to sit exactly. You might assume, well, this is where the host or the head of the table is. Well, it's obvious from this passage that the people came to this luncheon. I'm going to call it a luncheon. It might have been dinner, but they obviously knew where the master of the ceremony was going to be seated. It's this guy's house. And so they're obviously trying to get the best seats, right? And we know that because Jesus says, we noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, and he told him this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both you will come to you and say, hey, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you'll have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, hey, friend, move up to a better place. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. I'm flying through this part because this doesn't actually matter for the rest of what we're doing, but it kind of matters as a setup, right? Is this Jesus' house? No. He's an invited guest. And he's the center of attention, right? Already he's healed a guy and he's disrupted the beginning of it by that healing. And now he's picking apart the guests, right? He's like, look, y'all came in and all trying to vie for the right and the left seats and getting the best seats in this house. So how do the guests feel at this point? Yeah, they've all been called out, right? Because even if they didn't get the good seat, they wanted it. And Jesus is calling them all out. He's rebuking the Pharisees' friends. How does that normally go over? Yeah, not too good. Does anybody want to have Jesus over for lunch today? I mean, yeah. So Jesus isn't done. So then Jesus turns to the host, the prominent Pharisee, who's got to be at this point going, oh my gosh, why did I invite Jesus? This was a bad idea. Bad idea. And he says to the host, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or your sisters, your relatives or your rich neighbors, because if you do, they might invite you back, and so you will be repaid. Now, is Jesus literally saying don't invite your friends and family for lunch? What's he actually saying?
That shouldn't be your main goal. That
Do-
shouldn't be.
Yeah, don't just invite them, because when you invite them, when you invite all your other rich Pharisees, you're doing it because you want something in return. You want to be invited to their house so you can sit in their prominent seats. What he's saying is don't use people. Have they already used people in this luncheon? Yeah. So Jesus is saying don't use people. Don't treat people like tools. Don't invite only those who can do something for you. Don't build relationships based on what you can get. Don't keep score. Don't calculate your return. Don't turn connection into transaction. Don't reduce people to their usefulness. Don't rank people by what they can bring to your table. Don't overlook those who have nothing to offer you. Don't ignore people who can't repay you. And don't make your table a mirror of yourself. That's what he's saying in essence. Because who do we often invite to our table?
Our friends,
And why are they our friends?
because you have something in common with them.
Yeah, they like you, they respect you, they treat you nice, you have similar interests. We all do this, right? Jesus is saying, don't just invite those people. There's more out there to invite. So then he says to the host, but when you give a banquet, who's he telling to invite? Verse 13, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and then you will be blessed. Now, this lunch is super awkward. How many in the room do you think are poor, crippled, lame, or blind? This many. The only other one that fit that category, Jesus just made him not that and he left the room, right? So there is 0 people in the category that Jesus says you should have over for lunch. And he says, although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. What Jesus is doing is he's dismantling this system built on reciprocity and status. Because in the ancient world, not terribly unlike ours, but in the ancient world, back then, meals were social currency. So when you invited someone over, it was expected that they would invite you back, and you would invite someone to help you climb the social ladder, and then they would invite you back so you could then go up a couple rungs on the ladder. It was kind of how it worked. And Jesus is taking this whole system and saying, this is not how the kingdom is supposed to operate. Not at all. He's saying, in essence, see people as image bearers of God. Don't look at what's in their pocket. Don't look at the camel they drive. Don't look at their designer sandals. He's saying, no, these are image of God. Invite them over because of that. Invite people who are different than you. Invite people who can't give you anything in return. Invite people because you value them, not what they provide for you. Make room for the people who don't fit naturally into your circle. Give something without expecting something to be returned. Love without leverage. Build tables, not transactions. That's kind of what the heart of what Jesus is saying here. So we have Jesus heals this man who was brought in as a prop. He does it on the Sabbath. He's confronted the Pharisees' guests and called them all out for trying to sit in the better seats. And then he calls out the prominent Pharisee in his own home, in front of his guests, for filling the room with people just like him, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how awkward is this lunch right now? A high 9, okay? This is like a really awkward lunch, right? Have you ever been in a really awkward social setting? And I don't know if you're the type of person who would do this, but have you ever seen the people who are like, you're in a super awkward, like someone said something super awkward, and you're the one that's like trying to fill the words, like, let's just talk about something else nice, you know? You ever know those kind of people, right? Well, that one of those guys was at the lunch, because this is super awkward, and you have this one guy in verse 15, one of those at the table heard all this, and he says to Jesus, hey, isn't it going to be great when we get to heaven and we have the feast with the Messiah? He's like kind of changing the subject, because Jesus is, right before that, Jesus is talking about, hey, invite all these people you would never invite, because you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. And this guy was like, I got to save the moment. You know what's going to be awesome one day is when we have a meal with the Messiah in the kingdom. That's going to be great. He's kind of like throwing out this like, ooh, let's kind of move on from this part of the lunch, right? Interestingly, who is he having lunch with at the very moment? A meal with the Messiah. Isn't that funny? So this guy he's trying to fill this awkward silence because Jesus has absolutely sucked all the air out of the room at this point, right? And what's he talking about? If you go to Isaiah 25, it talks about, in the Old Testament, numerous references to one day when the Messiah comes and all righteousness is restored and the kingdom, becomes the kingdom. There will be a feast, a great feast with the Lamb. And you see this in Revelation. The book of Revelation talks about the same thing in Revelation chapter 19. It's called the marriage supper of the Lamb. You ever heard of that? You probably heard of it in Christian circles. So Jesus makes this perfect segue from this awkward lunch. And before we do the perfect segue, I'm going to do the perfect segue into a small group discussion. So what I want you to do is I want you to talk among your table, or if you're not at a table, grab one. Mike, can you pass some of these around for me? Thank you. I want you to talk about a positive memory that you had at a table, either growing up in your childhood or one that you established as an adult. What's one of the most positive or powerful memories you had being at a table with someone? When have you felt the most welcomed in any group that you've been a part of? It could be church, it could be sports, it could be a club, whatever. But when have you felt the most welcome, and what made it feel that way? If you're being honest at your table, who naturally ends up at our tables, and why? I want you to get into the weeds a little bit of that. And then if Jesus was building your guest list, who would he add that you wouldn't? And then who needs to be at table 45 or our church over the next 6 months? So talk about that. Pick a small group leader and discuss for a few minutes. So.
Positive memory.
Growing up, I guess, and your family now. I was like, we were all like in the middle 20s.
How we doing? We ready to give me? Don't borrow that. Give me your feedback. What was a memory or a memorable moment at a table that you had as a kid growing up, or even as an adult? What do you think? Yeah.
Sunday lunch after church.
Okay. That was just kind of a memory you had of every Sunday. Okay, that's awesome. I love that. Who else? Yeah.
I was a student, and I was at a party, and then everybody was kind of like, they knew each other, yada, yada, yada. And I was there with a blind man who was 20 years old.
Okay.
And that was a little uncomfortable.
Okay. You remember that?
I absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
But I remember that as I talked with him, that he had a marvelous insight toward life.
How about that? Yeah. So you wouldn't
And I
have,
really enjoyed our conversation and our time together.
yeah,
I really did.
that's awesome. So you wouldn't have chosen that lunch, but now that you had it, you gained from it.
Oh, absolutely.
Good, that's awesome. Yeah.
I have one. This senior luncheon that you always
Yeah.
have here. So I used to have to bring Donna because she couldn't
Yeah.
get up and get her own plate and stuff. But the first time I felt super awkward because obviously I was younger than everybody
Yeah.
in here. And
Yeah.
I was like, they're gonna think I'm just here for the free food. So, but and I thought like I won't have anything to talk about. Like they're just gonna be looking
Yeah.
at me like, why is she here? But everybody talked to me
That's
and
awesome.
included me, and I actually look forward to it. every
That's
time
awesome.
after
Good.
that first time.
Yeah. And even though, yeah,
I told Paul I might make some chicken and dumplings.
there we go. Good. Who else? Anyone else had a memorable moment at a table or something you remember? Yeah.
As we started talking about this question, this whole table had the same response of the first time they walked in this church.
Oh, that's awesome. Very good.
Which is so welcoming.
That's cool.
And that's what we're about.
Yeah.
That's, and okay, it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
But everybody has felt that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I may have told this story, I'll tell it quickly, but when I got hired here, I was part-time, but no one knew me except a very small group of people who had interviewed me. And they offered me the job, and I said, well, give me 2 weeks. And they were like, well, why 2 weeks? I said, because I want to go to your church for 2 weeks as a nobody. I want to see how the people treat me. Because the moment, if they knew I was staff,
Yeah.
I knew I'd be treated differently. So for 2 weeks, I came back, and they were as lovely, and I thought that's what sold me, is the people. So I agree. So awesome. How about another example of you felt the most included in a group, where besides our church, if there's another group that you felt immediately connected to, or they made you feel welcome? Yeah.
A member of our table, whom I will not name.
Okay.
Just had a retirement lunch.
Okay.
I felt honored and that the honor was genuine.
That's awesome. Good. That's great. Yeah.
It was the same, like Donna.
Yeah.
The very first time that I met her, she just like invited me in, started talking
That's
to me,
awesome.
like we had known each other for forever, and the whole family always just included me right off the bat.
Yeah. Donna was awesome like that. Yeah, that's cool. All right, let's get a little honest. Who naturally ends up at our tables most of the time?
People we know.
People we know? Family? Yeah. People who, can I say this? People who you know aren't going to make the lunch awkward?
Yeah, that's what I said.
I mean, is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we kind of struggle with those invites like, oh boy, as soon as we invite Jesus to this one, it's going to get real awkward quick. So, all right, if Jesus was building your invite list or your guest list, who would he add that you wouldn't? And I don't necessarily mean the person's name, but I'd never have Mike there. What's that?
Ready?
Yeah.
Jim Baker.
Jimmy. Okay. Okay. Who would he invite that you wouldn't?
One of our people said, an enemy.
An enemy. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get into that in one of the weeks.
Almost any politician.
Any politician. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. This is rhetorical, but who needs to be here at table 45? Who needs to be at another class? Doesn't have to be this one, but who needs to be who needs to be in a Bible study, a disciple class? Who needs to be at our church? You know? Everybody, yeah, that's right. But I mean, we could say that, but there's certain people, right, that we probably think about. If we slow down a minute, we go, you know what? I've never invited them to something. Maybe I need to do that. The scariest part of invitation is what? Rejection. But if you look at it like, don't take it so personally, you know, and just say, hey, you should come check it out. So, well, we get back to the story here, and after the dude made the awkward, like, hey, we're going to have a great time in heaven with Jesus, Jesus tells a story. He segues right into it. He says, a certain man's preparing a great banquet, invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, come, for everything is now ready. But they all began to make excuses. The first one said, I just bought a field. I have to go tend to it. Please excuse me. The other one said, I just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. Another one said, I just got married. I can't come. So the certain man sends a servant out, and all he's getting back is a bunch of excuses, right? Are these evil excuses?
No, made up.
They're made up? They do sound like, I got to do my hair, you know? They do ring a bell like that, right? But they're not evil excuses, but they're preoccupied ones, right? There's obviously something else more important to these people than this party. And obviously this is just a story, but Jesus is telling it for a reason. So in verse 21, the servant comes back, reported this to his master, and the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. Man, that sounds familiar. Where did we just hear that list? Oh, verse 13. Jesus had literally just told the men in the room, these are who you should invite. Sir, the servant said, what you have ordered has been done, but there is still room, meaning room in the banquet. So the master says to the servant, go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in so that my house will be full. Who's on the road and on the country lanes? What's Jesus saying here? Anybody, okay. But who else? Like, there's something about... All right, the poor. Okay, that's part of it. That's part of it because he had already made that clear of strangers. Okay, but
Without a lot of friends, probably.
all right, maybe without because they're farmers. Is that what you mean? No. All right, but I only think outskirts. Homeless. Okay, or maybe outside your neighborhood. Gentiles, yeah. Outside
Foreigners.
foreigners, okay. But I think he's saying, you're getting it. I think he's saying out beyond your comfort zone, out beyond your circle of natural travel. Think outside the box is what I think what he's saying here, right? So he says, go out to those places so that my house will be full. What is the heart of the master here? What's his ultimate goal here? Yeah, he wants them in, but what's his ultimate goal is what? He's provided a great feast, a banquet, and he doesn't want an empty seat. He has, think of it as a room. He has a huge room, and he doesn't want an empty table. If you owned a hotel, let's think about it from a commerce section, but if you owned a hotel, every bed that's empty means you've lost revenue, right? So any hotel owner wants every bed filled. That's why companies like Priceline exist, because they came up with a creative way. I don't care who's in the bed. I'd rather get $20 than $0. That's why cruises do these last minute deals, because they have to pay a port fee for every empty room. You know that? No. It's not the cruise. The cruise company's not like, oh, we're just so generous. They have to pay literally for every single empty room. They have to pay a port fee. They'd rather someone else pay the taxes than they have to pay. So they say, come on in. It's the heart of our business people, because they don't want to lose money. But it's the heart of the master, because he doesn't want to lose people, souls. He's got a banquet. He's got a giant room, and he wants to fill it. And does he care? Does he say only bring in this person or that type of person, or what's his criteria? All, anybody, doesn't matter. I don't care. I want it full. And then look at the very end. It says, and I tell you, verse 24, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet. Let's change the words around for a minute. Instead of a certain man or the master of the home, put in God. The servant, put in Jesus' name. And the initial invited people were the Jews. The Jews. Remember, God said he was going to come to the Jews first and then to the Greeks. So Jesus is literally at the table of who? The Jews. He's at the seat of the table of the Jewish people. The heart of their Jewish people is the Pharisees. And they don't know who they're sitting with. In fact, they're not happy that they're with the Messiah at lunch. And Jesus is telling a story saying, when God invited the Jews and the Jews rejected Jesus, then Jesus went to who? The Gentiles. And I think the application to us is that God's heart is to bring all people. All people. So this is where it gets really awkward, okay? You have to apply it to yourself, and I have to go because we're almost done. You might invite someone who's gay. You might have to invite someone who's transgender. You might have to invite a Republican or a Democrat. Oh. You might have to invite someone who's disabled or socially awkward or blind or poor or they smell. Like, that's where it starts to get really real, doesn't it? And I think Jesus is saying, you have a table and it's my house and I want it filled. It's our job to find out, okay, well then who's in our world? And then if our world of all of our Pharisee people won't come to our church, then he's saying, go where? Then keep going. Keep going out and bring them in. And if you bring them in, if you bring in the guy who is swollen, his body is swollen, it's uncomfortably swollen, you bring him into this setting, Jesus says, I don't care. Bring him in. He needs healing. I'm not ashamed that he's here. Bring him in. If everyone else is ashamed, that says more about them than it does about the heart of God, right? I'll leave you with that. We got to go. Let me pray. God, we're grateful for the word that you bring us. Help us make room at the table. It's literally part of our mission statement at HUMC. You call us to open the door and make room at the table so we can create spaces so that we can foster lasting relationships with Christ. Help us to do that and help us to know what that means for us and how to apply it. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all. Have a good day.